My name's Lydia, and today we're going to be making homemade cough drops with honey. So people make cough drops all different ways. Most of the homemade ones have honey in them, but today I'm going to make it as easy as I can to use things that you would normally have at home in your pantry, especially if you cook or bake a lot. I mean, there's always going to be a few random things that you don't normally have, but I'm going to make it as easy as possible, and we're going to have a ton of fun. So let's go. Okay, so our first step is we're going to take 3/4 cup of boiling water. I just had it in my teapot, and I'm going to put it in a mug because it's a little bit easier to use there. And then you're going to put in 1 chamomile tea bag, and you're going to put in 1 peppermint tea bag, and then you're going to put in half a teaspoon of cinnamon. I do not have fresh cinnamon, so it's better if you have fresh like cinnamon sticks that you ground up. But it's okay if you have dry. And then next I'm going to put in, I have fresh ginger. I did go and buy that. So I'm going to put in ginger. And then I'm going to let it seep in this like watery stuff. It smells really good. And I'm just going to let it sit in there. I'm going to put a cup or a plate over it so that it can really stay warm then. Okay, so my mixture has been seeping for about 10 minutes. And what I'm going to do is I took the tea bags out, I squeezed them really well to get every last bit of everything out of it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pour it into a pot through a little like tea strainer, because apparently there is that much stuff in the bottom from all the ginger and the tea and everything else like that that comes out of it. There's like a pile of it, and then I'm just going to take my fingers and squeeze it out to make sure I get all the good stuff in there. I want to make sure everything that I can possibly get in there is in there. Make sure you squeeze it really well, and then we're going to do our next step. Okay, so for my next step, I'm going to take 3/4 cup of honey, and I'm going to scrape it in with the water that I had in my little pot. And I'm going to turn on my stove to medium heat, and I'm going to start to get this stuff to a boil. So the thing about this is basically you're like making candy, so you have to be really, really careful not to let it burn. So I'm going to be stirring it the whole time. I'm going to be checking it, and then once it gets to a boil, I'll tell you the next step for your cough drops. Okay guys, so now my stuff is at a boil. I have it on about medium-high heat. I raised it just a little bit so it can actually get to the temperature I want it. I'm making sure I'm being so careful, stirring it all the time so that it doesn't burn. And I have my candy thermometer clipped to the side of the pan, and I want it to get to 300 degrees. So stir it, and then, but make sure it doesn't get too hot, so be watching it really carefully. Once it gets to 300, immediately take it off the heat, and you can just set it on a hot pad or whatever you want, to wherever you set your hot pans. So be really careful and make sure it gets all the way up to that 300 but no higher. Okay, so it took a lot longer than I thought to get to that 300 degrees, but make sure it gets there or else it won't harden correct. And then I'm just stirring it, and I'm going to let it sit for about 5 minutes. Until it turns into a syrup. You don't want to let it sit for more than 5 minutes, or else it will start to get too thick and then harden too quickly and you can't use it anymore. After it sits for 5 minutes, I'm just going to start spooning it out onto parchment paper, and I'm just going to let them sit until they're hard. Okay, so after they harden, I sprinkle cornstarch on top of them, and I'm just going to let them completely make sure they're completely dry, and then I'm going to put them in a container and keep them until I'm ready to use them. Alright y'all, that's it for this episode of 3 True Bees Kitchen. Make sure you check out the 3 True Bees Facebook page and enjoy your homemade honey cough drops.